participate in the chat or to unmute yourself so that you can also speak up at some points. Or just raise your hand if you want to say something, please. So yeah, what Angel will present to you today is based on a workbook that we are finalizing to publish on the service platform by next week. This workbook will walk you through 7 steps to create your social media strategy. It's something that I think you can accomplish quite quickly, actually, with, I would say, less than an hour of sitting down with yourself or your team. And that a lot of you might be able to do most of that work today just by following along with this presentation. So definitely have a notepad open on your computer so that you can take some notes and maybe start to do this work today. Angel, I'll let you take it from here, and just let me know if you need me for anything.
Thank you. Let's get started. So guys, I'm here today to help you build a social media strategy. You may already have knowledge with social media. Maybe you're an avid user, maybe you just use it personally, or maybe you use it on behalf of your NSO. Regardless of your experience with social media, you should be able to walk away from this session feeling pretty confident that you can create a solid social media strategy to be able to lead you to create great conversations with your audience and all the exciting things that come with social media. So let's begin. The agenda for the session today is we're going to start with a nice icebreaker. So as Lynn mentioned, it's really great to hear some of your opinions on this next session, and it also gets over that awkwardness of starting the conversation and speaking, because this does want to be a free flow conversation throughout the session. Then I'll walk you through the 7 steps to a strategy, and then there'll be time at the end for any pressing questions. There will be 1 or 2 options to answer questions throughout the session, but if possible, make a note of it as we're going through, and then I'm happy to answer them all at the very end, just for continuity and also just conscious of time. So onto the icebreaker. I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to think of a social profile that you regularly engage with. Why do you keep up with them? And do you think that they have a strategy? While you're thinking about this, I'm going to share a social media profile that I check almost daily, just to give you an idea of the things that I noticed, and then I'd invite you to share some of yours. So for me, there is a social media profile called Sisters Village. I am very much into horoscopes and finding out about what the stars have in line for me on every day. Some people don't follow this, absolutely fine. This social media profile shares monthly updates, shares daily updates, talks very in depth about your star signs and about where your houses are. If you know anything about horoscopes, then this is all very exciting, maybe very exciting for you. It gives updates on the different horoscope months that we're going into, the different seasons, the different moon phases, and how that could affect you based on your star sign. So, as you may see from the 2 images that I've shared, depending on the content type that they're sharing, just to bear in mind that they only ever share text, they never share any photos. All of the details within their profile are usually text-based, explaining what, for example, the purpose of a Gemini or the purpose of a Cancer. Depending on the topic that they're speaking about, the post is designed in the same way, which makes it very easy to find the relevant content on their profile if you go to their account. So if you'll see on the right-hand side, the image here is all about the different purposes of the different star signs, and they're all branded in the same way. They're laid out in the same way, they have the same background. On the left-hand side, you'll see that the moon phases are in one color. So in the middle, you have a conversation about the Sagittarius full moon, and then the image on the left-hand side of it is also related to the full moon and just kind of a general sense of astrology. And then moving on to a different full moon, you have Capricorn, which is different and is branded in a set way. but it has the same text continuity throughout it. And it all seems to follow the same theme, which makes it very easily identifiable. And it also makes it very shareable content. Everything that is on this page is built to be shareable. I regularly share these things to my stories, and I see other people do, and that is kind of the main purpose. And what we would say from an outsider's perspective is the strategy of the social media profile is that their aim is to create content that is extremely shareable. So if anybody else has any social profiles that they regularly engage with and would like to share, now is a great opportunity too. Otherwise, I might start calling people out. Okay.
I don't know, Michelle might have some ideas.
Yeah, Michelle.
If I want to call out on Michelle.
Michelle, would you like to share?
Yes, I follow a working out page. So it's like a gym that I follow, and their content is very like dynamic, and they're constantly uploading people like working out and like pushing you to work out every day and inspiring you. So it's very, very helpful, because when I feel like I don't want to work out, then I open Instagram and there's people working out and encouraging each other. So it makes me want to work out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great example. I've shared this one in past workshops, but I am a huge fan of this elephant orphanage in Kenya called Sheldrick Trust. And I think that they do such a great job with their content, because they've really found the balance between like fun and informative content. Of course, they're lucky because they have very cute like pet faces for their organization, having baby elephants and so on. But they do a really good job of fundraising using social media. So if you're ever looking for examples of that, that can be a great organization. So I'll just drop it here and you can have a look, but they're good inspiration for social media as well.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that in. Anybody else would like to share? Now is a great opportunity too. One more person would be great. Maybe from the guys. Aaron, would you like to share anything? No. Okay, moving on. So let's get into the part that you're all here for, which is 7 steps to creating a social media strategy. Step 1 is all about defining your key audience. So when we're talking about a key audience, we're talking about how it's very important that with social media, we are reaching the right people. So as we are well aware, there is over half of the world's population is now on social media. Our aim is not to reach everybody. One, that's impossible. There's no way. And also, it's not going to be relevant for so many people. So then how is it possible for you to create content for everybody if your audience is too large? So what we want to do is really think about the types of people that we want to speak to and base our content around that. So a great way to start to think about this is asking yourself, who is actually engaging with your content right now? Do you think, is it maybe scouts? Is it more scout leaders? Is it maybe other NSOs or potentially partners? These are all potential audiences that may be currently engaging with your content. Are they the people that you are wanting to reach? Because then if so, great, keep up what you're doing. If not, then maybe it's time to look at changing your content and the messaging behind it to engage a different audience. So for our first step, we are going to ask you this is an example of some of the audiences that we reach. We're going to ask you to think about maybe 1 to 3, depending on the social media platform that you really want to reach. So here at World Scouting on our channels, we genuinely target scout leaders and NSOs on Facebook. we're looking to target scouts on Instagram, and our partners in media we target through Twitter. So you don't have to reach all your audience on every single social platform. That's just not the case. Different audiences are on different social media platforms. So it's great to identify who you want to speak to, and then it's easy to then figure out the rest of the steps. So for step 2, we're going to ask you to determine your key outcome. If you've thought about the audience that you want to reach, now's to decide what actions do you want most people to take when they see your content. So this is based on the audiences that you've considered just in the step before. And now you're going to think about what actions you want that audience to take when it comes to your content. It's really important to structure your content and make sure that you're relating to your audience. So say if you want your audience is to be targeting scouts, but then you're sharing information of how to sign up to scouting and why you should be a scout, but your audience is already scouts, they're not going to engage with that content because it's not relevant to them. So even though it's related to scouting and it's following a scouting message, what you're actually saying isn't related to them because they're already within the movement. They're already active scouts. They want to see other things. So this is a great opportunity to decide on what your kind of KPI is going to be per your audience and from your social channels to then help tailor your content and get the best engagement from that. So here's some ideas to look at. You can explore building brand loyalty. So this is related to the audience that you already have, that they're already within scouting, or maybe they're not, but they're already following. So say you've got 2,000 followers on your social media channel. How do you keep them loyal and keep them coming back? Then there's growing brand awareness. This is targeting those outside of scouting. So imagine that you're speaking to somebody that's never heard of scouting before, doesn't have a clue what it is, wants to know more. How would you tailor your content to target them? And what action do you want them to complete? If you're looking to increase conversions, this could be asking people to join scouting. It could be asking existing scouts to sign up to initiatives, or maybe there's a jamboree or an event upcoming that you want people to sign up to. These are all things that have a call to action on the post, and you are wanting that audience or the person that sees that to make an action. So you need to tailor your content to encourage them to go and do something. If it's boosting brand engagement, we're looking at how do we create kind of an open line of conversation between the audience that we have on our social media channels. So you'll regularly see, if you follow World Scouting, that we ask people to comment down below, have that open line of conversation. You'll see us replying to comments, boosting brand engagement. These are loyal followers of the Scout brand, or maybe the loyal followers of your NSO, and they want to see kind of what exciting things that you're posting about, that they can get involved, that they can share, that they can relate to, and have that communication with you. And then if maybe you're looking to support growth of donations, this is an opportunity to direct people to the Scout donation platform, or maybe you have local fundraising efforts within your NSO, within your community. Are you wanting people to donate? Are you wanting people to be involved in those fundraising efforts? These are all things to consider. And it's also important to know that the more you select, the more difficult it is to maintain these different types of messaging and reach the correct audiences. So we'd recommend selecting maybe 1 or 2, or maybe it's the case that these change throughout the year. So for the first quarter of the year, you're focusing on building brand loyalty and growing brand awareness. And then for the second quarter, you're looking at boosting engagement with that. And then maybe in the last quarter of the year, you have a great fundraising effort and you want to switch up your key outcome to target donations and being involved in fundraising efforts. So these are not fixed key outcomes, but they need to be structured in a way that it makes sense and you're not overwhelming your audience. Remember always that it's quality over quantity, and if you overwhelm yourself, your audience will be confused and will probably not carry out the actions that you're asking them to, because you're sharing far too much information for them to pick something to get involved in. Step 3 is all about choosing your social media channels. So ask yourself, what's your audience? Who is your audience? And what platforms do you think that they use? And are there maybe a specific social platform that's in your country that's really popular, that is maybe not what we've listed? Obviously, we're aware that in Africa, Facebook is a very, very popular social media platform for kind of everybody, but maybe in another country, Instagram is the leading platform. So these are all things that you need to consider that's right for your NSO in the area that you are. Also remember that managing and maintaining a social media presence is a time-consuming and a difficult thing to do. So it's best to focus on maybe between 1 and 3 social channels rather than trying to stretch yourself. If your NSO is volunteer run or only has 1 communication staff, then really focus on just 1 or maybe 2, if you think that you can, social media channels, because it's much better to have a strong and consistent presence on 1 platform than kind of a week and only post monthly across 5 different platforms. It really depends on your long-term focus and what you know is available in your organization. You can always introduce a different social media platform at a different time if you get more resources. So
yeah, can I just add to that, Angel, is that I do get messages from NSOs sometimes who'll say like, oh, we're not on TikTok or we're not on Instagram yet. It's okay. You really don't have to be everywhere. And that's what we'll get into a little bit more, but I just want to take away any of that guilt about whether you should be on one platform or another. Using the strategy, the idea is to really help you focus that energy so that you're not trying to spread yourself too thin and be everywhere. So this part is really important. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. So when we're considering our social channels, this is where we're going to refer back to where we have decided on what our audience is. So maybe your audience is younger generations, you're trying to target scouts, non-scouts, then your focus would maybe going to be on Instagram, or you could consider YouTube or TikTok. These are kind of social media platforms that are aimed at the younger population. And then if you're primarily targeting scout leaders, NSOs, partners, you could look to maybe focus your time and effort on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, even YouTube to some extent, because YouTube's is a much mixed demographic. And then it's also as well important to consider what your key what you want from your key performance goals. So this is all about kind of the actions that you want people to take, what you want people to do with your content, with your sharing, all depends on the platforms that you post on. So as you're aware, World Scouting has a presence on all 5 channels that are listed here. However, we do invest our time and resources more on Instagram and Facebook, and we're starting to increase our resources into TikTok. So whilst we still do have a presence on Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, and LinkedIn, the amount of time and resources that we spend on those platforms is a lot less in comparison. And this is because we have seen that there's more growth opportunities on those other platforms, that more of our audience that our key audiences are on those platforms, and engagement is higher. So we are very much aware that it's not possible for everybody to be everywhere. So this is where it's time to kind of have a real think about, maybe you're already active on some of these social media channels and maybe they're doing really well, great, continue that. Or maybe you've been trying to push yourself to be really active on YouTube, but you realize that it takes a lot of resources and you don't have time and you can't post consistently, then it's completely okay to take a step back from that and think, with my time available, where can I spend my time and what type of content can I create in a much more efficient way for myself. So, and then moving on.
Maybe let's recap really quickly, because I know it's a lot of information and a few people who joined late. So we're doing 7 steps. And the first 3 that we've talked about is choosing your audience, selecting your key goals or outcomes, and choosing your social media channels. So that's where we're at right now. We have 4 more steps.
Cool. And yeah, if anybody has any questions or anything that they want, feel free. It's an open line of conversation. If they're short, quick questions, or maybe a comment, maybe you have an experience from your NSO that you'd like to share, these are all very useful things. So if anybody has anything that they'd like to share, feel free to. Otherwise, I will move on. So on to step 4 is considering your brand voice. So when we're talking about our brand voice, a brand is so much more than a logo. It's everything that brand encompasses and how it portrays itself to its audience. So what would you recognize as scouting without seeing the logo? If people want to shout out some ideas, before you even see the Scout logo, what do you see and you're like, instantly, that's scouting, or they're a scout? Anyone? Okay. So for us, we recognize that the outdoors and young people that is very much associated with the Scout brand. Neckers, camping, Scout scarves. If you see a young person with a colourful scarf on, it's almost a global knowledge that that person is a Scout. And groups of young people in the outdoors, again, is what embodies the Scout brand. So aside from this as well, we also consider that useful faces, a useful tone of voice. You'll notice that when we're sharing messages on social media, none of it is very, I guess, professional in that sense. It's a very kind of casual tone of voice. We have jokey, we use a lot of emojis because we're targeting young people. As well, the color purple. If you see somebody in a purple shirt, the first thing that comes to mind might be, oh, is that a Scout, before you see any logos. So the point is with this is to kind of emphasize that you don't need to put the Scout logo on the content that you're putting out, especially on social media. If you see a piece of content that has a logo on it, especially with a lot of advertisement that's on social media now, you tend to think of it as an ad. So you're less likely to engage with it unless you're really, really passionate about the brand. You'll kind of scroll past it because you see the logo first and your thought is that it's a paid advertisement. So that's just something to consider when sharing content, because all of these things, the outdoors, neckers, young people, are strong enough brand indicators of Scouts without having to put a logo on top.
Yeah, we got a lot of good answers also in the chat here, like campfires, tents, adventure, community service, the Scout salute. So even if you're not wearing a uniform, that's one way to show the brand. I think those are the ones that are different from what's already been mentioned. Jamboree. Yeah, really good answers.
Great. you. So when we're considering our voice, finding your social media brand voice is how you can create a recognizable and relatable personality for your brand on social. So sometimes even just the way that you spread your message and with the captions that you write can be how your audience recognizes that it comes from the Scout brand. Before they see a picture, before they see your username, just the tone of voice that you have in your messaging can be strong enough to portray your branding. So this is just kind of a little task for you to think about the type of voice that you want your brand to have, is to list 3 adjectives to describe your social media tone of voice. So for us, when we're speaking from World Scouting, we have a fun, lighthearted and youthful voice across all of our communications. And this is what we really try to make sure is shown on every piece of content that comes from us. You can also look at between 3 or 5 or as many as you like recent scouting images or videos from your organization. Do you think they kind of adopt the correct brand? Have you found that maybe you're popping your logo on there where you don't need to, because it's clearly a picture of scouts wearing a knickers in the outdoors? It's not relevant to have your logo on it. So that also leads into the next bit of, this is where you need to think about the 3 kind of main things that you want represented in your imagery. Don't try and list off too many, because it's not going to be possible if you set yourself that there's 7 things or 10 things that you want to be represented in your imagery. It's going to be impossible to create content based on that. So pick 3 things, make it short, simple, and then make sure when you're planning out content in the future that you can just have like a little tick list of, maybe, is there a young person's face on the image or on the content? Are they wearing a scarf? Are they in the outdoors? 3 easy things. It doesn't need to be represented in every picture. You could have a picture of the outdoors. You could have a picture of a young person wearing a scarf in the next one, or so forth. But that's just an easy kind of tick list that you can have. So when you're creating content, you can just go through and be like, yeah, tick, tick, tick. And then that's just a really easy way to keep you on track with your social strategy and making sure that your voice is coming across as the way that you have planned it out to be. So on to the big step. Does anybody have any questions on the last part? I know kind of thinking about brand voicing can be a little bit confusing, especially if it's the first time that you've actually thought about it. So if anybody has any comments or anything, feel free. If not, make a note of it and I'll answer them at the end of the session. But this next bit is going to be quite heavy. So setting out your content strategy. This is all about deciding how and when you're going to post, or based on all of the work that you've just completed. So based on your audience that you're gaining, based on kind of your key goals, based on the social media platforms that you're posting on, based on the tone of voice. So when we've decided all of that, now it's time to decide how much time you can dedicate to social media each week, and be realistic with this. It's, of course, we would all love to sit here and be like, I'm going to spend 25 hours on social media this week. I'm going to plan out X, Y, Z, and this is all I'm going to do. It's not realistic, especially if maybe you're a volunteer or you have other commitments. So as I've always said, quality is much more important compared to quantity. So it's okay if you don't have that much time to spend on social media. This is just a rough guide, but if you have under 5 hours per week, maybe aim to post 1 to 2 times a week on social media. And as we've said before, if you have less capacity, this might be on maybe 1 or 2 social media platforms. So it could be 1 on each platform. If you have between 5 and 15 hours a week, you want to aim to post maybe 3 times a week across your different social media platforms. And if you have more than 15 hours a week, great, you're one of the lucky ones. Aim for 4 to 5 posts a week. So just as well, to reiterate with this, it's very important to kind of set a key date that you can dedicate to spending on social media and also to post on social media. So having that consistency isn't necessarily for your audience, but more holding yourself to accountability and ensuring that you meet these deadlines each week. But it also works very well for the algorithm, because after a few weeks or a few months of posting consistently, say every Friday afternoon, then the different social media platforms pick up like, oh, this profile is consistent and they're active every week and they're getting a good amount of engagement, which naturally will push your content to a larger audience. So these things, being consistent does work. It does have a benefit. It works in your favor. So we'd strongly recommend dedicating one day to creating the content and then scheduling for roughly the same day, and especially time as well each week, because then as well, after a while, your audience knows when they can expect content from you.
Yeah. Angel, a question on this piece. Do you think that these guidelines apply if you're just posting to one social media channel, or what if you're on multiple channels? How does that change this?
If you're on multiple channels, then I would recommend, for example, if say you've got 5 hours per week and you're on 2 social media platforms, then I'd recommend posting once a week on each channel. And then start with that. It's better to start less and increase rather than start trying to push out lots of content and having to pull back, because it's kind of more like positive reinforcement for yourself, because if you set out the goal and you're saying, I've got 3 social media platforms and I'm going to post 3 times a week on all 3, you've got to remember that content on different social media platforms will be tailored different. Maybe you're targeting a different audience on the different channels. So it could be the case that you can't even share the same message across the same channels. It's better to start smaller and then kind of big yourself up when you get to a point that you can post a bit more, then be deflated that you have to pull it back because you can't keep up with the expectation that you set on yourself. So remember, as I have said, it is quality, not quantity. Unless you're like this cat who is desperate for more food, then maybe you want more quantity. But if you're not a cat and it's not related to food, then it's definitely quality. So step 5, based on all of everything that we've gone through, next is the exciting bit, is what content should I share? So when sharing content, you need to consider what your audience would like, which is why we have looked at defining who our key audience is. What kind of scouting content do you enjoy consuming and engaging with, and what kind of non-scouting content do you enjoy? Because this is a great way to kind of relate to yourself. If maybe your audience is a scout and you're a scout yourself, then you've got a few steps ahead of yourself, because you already know the type of content that you like seeing, so you can imagine that your audience will enjoy seeing the same content as well. And also think about what pieces of content your audience are currently engaging with the most. If maybe you're putting out some carousel posts that are very informative about maybe, for example, Earth Tribe, and you've started to notice a theme that your environmental posts are getting a lot more engagement compared to maybe kind of the more institutional posts that you're sharing, then take note that the environment posts are what more of your audience want to see, and you can tailor and use that to your advantage. So based on kind of the key goals that we decided on for our social media channels, here's just some ideas that you can take and some questions to ask yourself for the type of content that you should share. So for building brand loyalty, you want to think about sharing kind of what role does your follower play in the movement? So you're speaking directly to scouts, people already within scouting, and you want to kind of increase their loyalty to your brand. So share about the exciting things that scouts are doing within the movement. Share how big the movement is. A lot of scouts don't realize how international scouting is. They might not get the opportunity to go to the World Scout Jamborees or international events. So some of them may think that scouting is maybe in 1 or 2 countries, but don't realize that it's in 173 countries globally. It's a huge movement and can be very exciting for existing scouts, thinking about the opportunities that they have, the international friendship. Maybe that might encourage them to join Joe to Joti this year because there's an opportunity to engage with international scouts and so much more to learn. So these are just some kind of ideas of things that you can share. How does scouting change in communities? Maybe how does scouting look in your country compared to how scouting looks in a different country? This is all very exciting for existing scouts because they want to learn, they want to see what's different, they want to meet more people and meet and speak to people that have a shared passion for scouting. So if your key goal is growing brand awareness, then we want to think about sharing inspirational content of what scouting brings to young people and to local communities, tailored to people outside of scouting. So you can share kind of community service, maybe how a scout meeting looks, talk about the camping adventures, the outdoors, how, maybe you have an Eagle Scout, maybe a scout with a huge achievement. Do you have a Messengers of Peace hero? All of these things are very exciting and deserve to be shared and could be what draws in somebody outside of scouting and thinks, wow, that person's so cool, I want to be a scout, or I want to learn more. These are all great ideas to share. And you can as well, this doesn't mean it has to be in a photo. If you have videos of kind of your camp, going to a jamboree, maybe just a fun video of you at a scout meeting, doing some games, you can share it in as whatever different content form that you like. This is just kind of ideas for the type of content. And then if your key goal is to increase conversions, you can think about sharing educational content to encourage scouts or non-scouts to take action. So when we're saying increasing conversions, as I mentioned before, when defining your goal, there needs to be a call to action in the post. So maybe it's the case that you want scouts to join the Earth Tribe, or want scouts to be involved in the Sustainable Development Goals. There's a call to action and you're asking people to be involved in this. So you want to create content that's kind of educational and lets people know what it is and how they can get involved. And this can be related to anything. It could be drawing people in to explain what scouting is, how can you become a scout, maybe what this event is that's happening in the country and how can scouts get involved. As long as there's a call to action and it's clearly explained, then these are the type of posts that you'll put out to get an action. And then we have boosting brand engagement. So we're talking about targeting loyal followers of scouting, the people already involved in scouting within your area. So provide materials for them to engage with. So do you have an exciting opportunity? Are you maybe recognizing a group of scouts or a specific scout for their achievement? Or maybe it's simply just fun. I don't know if many of you see, but we regularly put out interactive Instagram stories, which can also go on Facebook, where they're literally just for fun. You'll see that we'll post them tomorrow in light of International Friendship Day on Saturday, where we want people to just share their friends within scouting and encourage people to share pictures. It doesn't have to be necessarily educational. It can simply just be fun. to get people to have a conversation with you and engage with the type of content that you're putting out there. But also boosting brand engagement opens up like a great opportunity to have a conversation, to see what maybe something's missing, or maybe something that people want to see from you. Hearing from your audience is the best way, and kind of to learn what they want to hear. So having that conversation is a great opportunity to develop your strategy even further. And then finally, if your goal was to support growth of donations, you can look to direct your audience to the Scout donation platform, or maybe share local fundraising efforts, etc. Obviously, we have the new assets that we mentioned at the beginning of this session, which we've dropped the Trello board links for, so you can share those. Really just encouraging people to get involved in whatever fundraising efforts or donation opportunities that you have available at that time. Make sense? Thumbs up if you're still following. All good. Cool. So step 5, how do we go about creating this content? So we know it can be difficult, wear all the hats when it comes to social media, but the good news is that you don't have to. It's not a one-man show anymore. There are resources and tools available for you to help support and make your life easier. So please do make use of them, because they are so helpful, and it would be impossible for me to do my job if I didn't rely on these resources every single day. So we have scheduling tools which you can have for free, which is Meta Business and Creator Studio. You can schedule posts on Facebook and Instagram on this. Twitter also has a scheduling feature where you can schedule tweets. LinkedIn has the same. YouTube has the same. WhatsApp does not. But most of the social profiles these days have scheduling tools built within them. So look them up. Usually they also have a walkthrough, a guide of how to use them and how to utilize them. Watch the videos. If in doubt, YouTube it. Somebody will always have an explanation on YouTube of how to use something. So these tools are vital, especially to ensure consistency that we were speaking about, being able to post on multiple platforms, multiple times a week. If anybody thinks that I sit manually posting everything that goes out from World Scouting channel, some people do believe this. It's not true. I use scheduling tools. It would not be possible for me to post, and I would not have a life outside of work if that was the case. So make use of these. Then we also have Canva. So this is a great graphics tool for creating all types of designs. You can create designs for social media, you can create stories, you can even create templates to lay over videos. So many exciting things, and they have a free version for non-profits. So the link will be in the workbook that we circulate round. So you'll be able to sign up, or simply just Google Canva non-profits and just sign up for it that way. You do have to prove that you're a non-profit, but obviously you have all those details. And then we also have video editors, which you can do on your mobile or you can do online, which is InShot and CapCut. Both of these have free versions. I think InShot has a watermark, but you can watch an ad before you download the video and it removes the watermark. CapCut, it has a watermark at the end, but you can always, after downloading it, delete it. So there's ways around these things, but both of them are free. And if you have any tools that you're already using, pop them in the chat, because we're always looking for new tools and other people might be able to use them. So super helpful. So if you're already using them and they're working for you, don't feel that you need to switch it out. These are just additions that might be able to help you when creating your content. Cool. So on to step 6. The big
just a few more minutes. Angel. So maybe we'll move quickly so we have some time to get through questions.
Yeah. So on to engagement. So think about what content forms you engage with and how you engage when it comes to engaging on a brand's profile. So you can engage in the form of replying to comments on your posts, replying to direct messages, liking and commenting on other posts in your industry. You'll see on the right, there's an example of where we've replied to comments. A heads up, people that follow you usually get pretty excited if you reply to the comment. So it's a great way to create a relationship with your audience. It's may seem obvious, but social media is meant to be social. If you have the capacity to have that open line of conversation, we strongly recommend to do so. If you feel that you're short of time, you can set up automated responses on direct messages, directing to an email contact, and there's other ways. You can save replies in your phone to easily reply to direct messages. So there's ways around it to make it quicker. And as always, there are do's and don'ts and things to consider when engaging on social media. So do make sure that you are being responsible, inclusive, transparent, and authentic, politically neutral when you are posting on social media, because whatever goes on social media is there forever. Even if you delete it straight away, there will be a trail of it. Somebody will have taken a screenshot. So be really conscious before you respond to anything. Don't share anything harmful to the movement or that could be harmful to other people. And obviously don't use any offensive language. If you do see any concerning content, whether that's maybe you're tagged in it, maybe somebody's messaged you directly, make sure that you report anything that is a cause for concern to the relevant Safe from Harm team. If you are a brand, if you are commenting and on using social media on behalf of your NSO, then you all have a responsibility to report and maintain and look out for Safe from Harm content. You can visit the website just if you need a refresher on these things. And then finally, we are on to the long haul, is to analyze your content. So it's really important that we're analyzing our content on a regular basis to see what our audience is engaging with and also see how we are performing. So when we're analyzing your content, the metrics you should consider, and in this order, are shares, comments, saves, and likes. So don't look at reach or impressions because your content could have an extremely high reach, but the actual actions, so shares, comments, saves, likes, could be low. So actually, even though it may have been seen by a lot of people, people aren't engaging with it. So that would maybe suggest that the content isn't really that good or that relevant to the audience. Don't be afraid to test the type of content that you're putting out. So it's okay if you do occasionally see low numbers because you're testing, you're trying to figure out what works well for your audience. We do that as well. It's the only way that you can learn. So don't be disheartened if your numbers look low. As you can see here, here's some examples from us. So the example on the left is a very rare case, is our only case in scouting on our social channels where we had a video go viral. And while the plays are extremely high at 8 million, the more important metrics that we look at are the likes, sends, saves, and comments. They're the ones that we can really see that people like and are enjoying this piece of content that we've put out. And then the more day-to-day, the type of analytics that we see on a daily basis is a recent post that we shared about the Dalai Lama. And again, we're looking, the reach was, if we looked at the reach, I think the reach was around 25,000 people. But as you can see, all in all, just short of 8,000 people have actually engaged with that content, which is still a very high performing piece of content and has done very well to get that engagement. So we see that as a success. Don't be disheartened if you see that 25,000 people have seen your piece of content or 5,000 people have seen your content, but only 200 people have replied or made an action on it. the right people have seen the content and made an action, and that's what's important. We're not trying to reach lots of different people, we're trying to reach the right people. So, and also just FYI, if you're in Europe, you won't be able to see sends, unfortunately, due to GDPR. So just be aware of that. As I've mentioned, success can't always be measured in numbers, so do not be discouraged if you feel you don't have enough followers or think that your numbers look low. Trust in Jim that don't worry about reaching everyone and focus on reaching the right people. And as always, social media is an ever-growing and ever-changing tool for communications with our audience, which means that we have to be ready to grow and change our strategy based on changes. So we really recommend, where possible, to review your social media strategy every 6 to 12 months. For one, to see if you're in line with what you've planned out in your strategy, and also to see if you need to change anything. And it's absolutely okay to change, because as social media continues to develop, things that worked 2 months ago, 3 months ago, even last week might not work in the time going forward. So just be adaptable and don't worry too much if something goes wrong, because it's a minefield. Nobody's an expert in this. If they say they are, they're not. It's not possible. So we fully believe that you can do this. We have the faith, and all of these steps should hopefully leave you feeling pretty confident that you can tackle social media. So I'm excited to see how you all go with your social media profiles, and I'll be checking them out. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angel.
Any questions?
Yeah. Okay, let me come back to some questions that were asked. Thank you for your presentation. So just a reminder that we will share next week a resource that guides you through exactly what Angel just did, but in a document. So if you want to take that and work on it with your communications team or volunteers, then you can do so. And so for questions, I know I have a question here from Frank in Madagascar. Said some scouts and leaders have difficulties to choose the subject or photo to share. What is your advice? So for one, there was a workshop 2 months ago just about photo and video. So if you want to watch that one, if you missed it, it could also be helpful for this. But Angel, did you have a couple of quick notes on that?
Sorry, can you just...
How to choose what photos or what subjects to share on social media?
So it really goes back to the type of audience that you're trying to tailor your content to. So like I mentioned, it's really considering your tone, your brand voice. As always, we recommend that sharing young people, as our scouting is all about young people, is a great thing to share. And also think about diversity, sharing girls, boys, sharing people from everywhere where possible, but also, given that this is more local and relevant to your communities, share scouts from your communities. You know, I could imagine that if I was a scout and my scout group shared me on social media, I would be so excited. It's the type of content that I'd want to share with my friends. So you can consider all of those things as well. You might realize that people are sending you imagery. If it's good quality, use it and be able to share that.
Yeah. And then additionally, I would say we have our Trello boards as resources to help you find and get inspired with ideas for content. So you can always look to the Evergreen calendar for some ideas of things that can be shared anytime, or to our month-by-month calendar, which Angel already walked you through earlier. And in terms of choosing photos, also one rule of thumb, I would say, is generally speaking, faces and people tend to do better on social media. And this is like a general rule for advertising. So I do recommend using those photos of faces, cutting out, as Angel mentioned earlier, watermarks and logos on photos that you share on social media, because the tendency in our brain is that when we see like logos and watermarks, we assume it's something that's commercial or trying to sell us something. And there's more of a tendency to scroll by. So instead, let the brand speak. Like Angel explained earlier, you know, all of those different aspects of what the brand is in an image. It's not only the logo. So I say you can cut that out completely. And yeah, focus on pictures of people, of course, when you have their consent to post them. Besides that, we also had a question. I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but let's see if we can give it a shot. Just curious, when WISDOM put content on social media, are you looking for a lot of clickbait? Can you address clickbait a little bit, Angel?
So yeah, from news outlets, a great example of clickbait is usually the title is only a small proportion of what's actually represented in the news that they're sharing. From our perspective, honestly, there will be times that we maybe do tweak it to sound more attractive, but we don't ever share anything that's misleading, because usually the people that are engaging with that content are already interested in what we have to share. So we don't have to kind of manipulate people with a clickbaity title to get them to engage with the content. There is definitely a way that you can shape a title or display a caption to encourage people to take action, but it's more down to like the tone of voice and kind of sounding excited about something. So if you want people to sign up to something, sound excited when you're talking about the thing that you want, the action that you want people to take. In scouting, we don't really need to use clickbaity as much as other brands may choose to. So the rule of thumb is you can make it sound as exciting as you want, just make sure you're not misleading people, because that's something that we really don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So just following our usual scouting values, we want to make sure that our approach with communications is always ethical. So avoid anything that is misleading, misinforming. So misleading means like if somebody clicks on that link, then that link should take them to what they expect to see based on what you wrote. So if you're misleading them and they arrive there and they're seeing something completely unrelated, I mean, I'm sure you've had that experience yourself, like you clicked on something thinking you were going to find information and it's not that. It's not a good experience for the user and they'll probably unfollow you. So as long as you're being truthful, as Angel said, put in that enthusiasm, and that's all we need, I think, for scouting. The other things to consider just from the ethical standpoint is I hope that nobody here is using these types of tactics, but if you hear about things like buying followers, using bots for comments, engagement pods, anything like this, these are not viable tactics for social media. Please do not be sold on any of these types of tactics, because they are not ethical, and they will also have you your page banned or suspended from Instagram or Facebook or any platform. Okay, besides that, there's just a comment from Billy, who has a fair point, just as I think one of the most engaging pieces of content is something relating with audiences like scout units that are camping, activities, or events that they just attended. Yeah, I agree, Billy. That's something that Angel and I definitely see in our content. It's always some of our top performing content tends to be camps or activities, especially when we can see smiling and laughing faces.
Yes, and can I input a little bit?
Please, yeah, sure.
Yes, and so according to the content, so what should we promote our content? So it focus for the previous events, because I saw that some like content announcement is very less engaging than the previous content like camping, jamboree, local activity. So what should we focus on?
That's a good point. And it's what I would say is that not every piece of content is going to be your best performing piece of content, right? Like it's impossible if they were all good, right? So we just know that some things we have a very good idea now, right, Angel, when we post like what's going to perform well and what won't. We're rarely surprised anymore. But once in a while we will be, and then we learn from that. So we also know that there's like the things that we post consistently, such as pictures from camps and jamborees and big events that we know are going to help keep our engagement high because it's what people love seeing most. But there's also the messages that we need to get out that might be a bit less exciting, but are still important. And then we do our best to find ways to get those messages to our audience in a way that they'll find engaging. Do you want to add to that, Angel?
Yeah, it's just, again, to kind of reiterate that, is that there'll be things that you should share, and don't be afraid of sharing things because you're nervous that it's not going to perform that well. If it's still relevant and it's information that people within your community need to know, then do share it. It's fine to experiment. Maybe the last time that you posted it in a certain way. Switch it up the next time that you share it. Try experiment. Maybe you shared it as an image. Try filming a video if you know that it's maybe not going to be that great at performing, but you want to try and switch up to make it a bit more engaging. You can experiment that way, but don't ever feel nervous to share something because you're like, oh well, I've been doing really, like, all my posts have been going really well, but I need to share this and it didn't get that much last time. You still need to share those things. We have things that we share that are very relevant. They just might be relevant to a smaller audience, but they're still important, just as important to share as all the exciting things.
Yeah, it also makes me think about what you were saying earlier, Angel, about reaching the right people rather than everyone. So not every single post is going to be relevant to everyone. I think the reason the camping ones are so popular is because everyone who sees them from scouting can relate to that. But maybe not everyone is as excited about Project for the Planet, but a subset of people who are really interested in starting a project for the environment. That's going to be a much smaller percentage of scouts, but it's still important and it's still relevant. So we're still going to post about it and reach them there. But you'll see even with that we experimented with different things, especially with the MOP Hero Open Call this year. You'll see we tried lots of different approaches. We used graphics, we used images, we used Instagram Reels, stories, all sorts of different things to see like how we could reach different people who prefer different types of content. So it's always a game of trial and error with social media. And the only way is to take some risks and try some things, and then you'll learn a little bit better how to reach people. Angel, we'll take one more question because I know we're already over time. So thank you everyone for sticking with us. But we have two questions that are related in a way. One from Ivy. Ivy is one of our interns, but also an MOP hero who works on a project with young mothers and their children. And so she was asking about like ethics and where we draw the line with ethics. So if the audience likes to see photos, for example, of the mothers with their children, but there might be some ethical questions around that, like showing images of young people. And then I had also seen David posted a question that's related to this. In recent conversations with WWF, they wanted to know, how do we collect permissions to share and reshare photos of young people on social media channels? So it's a good question. And I know Ivy, I know that she definitely gets permission from the young mothers to share those photos of them and their children, which is great. But Ivy's concerned that some people might view it as unethical to be sharing photos of young people and children. In my view, as long as you have received their permission explicitly, it's okay to share them. But of course, like we look at things like how are we, what's the word I'm looking for? Presenting people, we don't want to show people in like vulnerable situations or ways that we wouldn't want to see ourselves, right? So we want to show people in an image that is flattering, that is empowering, and so on, especially when it comes to young people, right? They're not like needy, they are empowered, they are creating a better world for themselves and for others and all of this. So I think that is the most important piece, is that we're showing people in a positive light and with their consent. In terms of how we seek that consent, Angel and I do a lot of work and spend a lot of time chasing people and getting consent from people to share photos. The lucky thing in scouting is that I don't think anyone's ever said no. They are so excited for an NSO or World Scouting to feature them because they are already like our really loyal, followers of our brand who are super engaged and love the brand. So I don't usually have any issues. The only thing is sometimes people won't respond, but that's fine. That means that they have not consented and we just don't share that image. But Angel, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about how you find some of those images and get the consent?
Yeah, for sure. So we regularly reach out. Well, for one, we have across social media, we have a lot of people sending us image directly. If we feel that they're a strong quality and something that would be relevant to share on our audience, then I will always go back and be like, hi, do you have permission from everybody that's featured within this picture? Do you have, if you're not the photographer, do you have permission from the person who took the picture for us to save this and add it to our media gallery with the correct credits, and then potentially go on to share on social media? If it's the case that I'm searching myself, I will tend to look through the different hashtags that we track across social media, so a main one being Scouts, and I will usually send the picture through direct message to that person from the official World Scouting account. Of course, always doing it through your own account. Don't ever, if you work in social media, maybe you're looking for work but you're looking on your personal one, please don't ever reach out on the wrong social media channel. It can be easy to do. If you need to separate that, make sure you do. I have had so many fears of accidentally posting on the wrong account. It's normal, but just make sure that you're always reaching out to people through the official accounts, and then ask. It's perfectly fine to be like, hi, we love this picture, we think you've captured Scouting great, we'd love to ask your permission and the permission of the people that are featured within the photograph if we can share this or add this to our media gallery and make it available for other people to share. And like Lynn said, usually in most cases they'll always come back and say yes, or and if they don't, it's no big deal. There's so many other images that are available out there, and you just move on to the next one. Don't ever think that it's a attack against, it's a personal thing. They just might not be comfortable with their image being shown to such a wide range. And also just another thing to add is that if from Ivy's perspective, that, you know, if people from the outside, if you're getting a lot of comments saying this is unethical, you shouldn't be sharing this, feel free, if you think it's necessary, if it became a big thing, to kind of make a comment on it and say and reply to the comment maybe, and just be like, hi, just so you're aware that we have full authorization from the people involved to share this image. Everybody's given consent. We would never share an image without asking consent from the people featured in. And you might find that person's like, oh, okay, like, that's so good to know, like, I just wanted to check. And then other people, if they felt the same, can see that comment, they're like, oh, cool, it's all good. So that's an option if you find that it's happening quite often.
Yeah, agreed. So yes, we use Instagram a lot to find those photos and get permission, but also I know that a lot of NSOs are getting their photos from events. So of course you should always have, as part of your registration for an event, some sort of disclaimer consent form, which explains that photos will be taken at this event, and by participating that, you know, your photo can appear. That's really important to make sure that you have all of that consent in place, but I'm pretty confident that you already have that in place. Okay, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Angel, for your presentation. I really look forward to sharing with everyone next week this presentation recording, but also the actual document, so you can take all of this and kind of just on paper, on screen, sit down and work through your social media strategy. I also look forward to seeing what comes of it. You know, like Angel said, we're always keeping an eye on different social channels to see what you put out. So yeah, we're excited to see, and we hope it will help you. I think primarily in the sense that we know that it can be very overwhelming to do social media, and we know that we're very lucky at World Scouting to have Angel dedicated to that in her job, and myself on other social media and other aspects of digital marketing, but we know that you don't all have that. So we want to really help you see how you can focus your attention a little bit more, not spread yourself too thin, and not burn out, because if you do, then there will be no content out there. So let's see how we can continue to better support you in your social media engagement. Okay, if you think of any other questions, you know where to find us. We will chat with you and see you next month for our workshop on doing interviews. It should be really fun.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
And thank you, Ko, for the French interpretation.
Thank you.
Bye.